and welcome everyone. So we are getting into kind of a little bit of a new realm now. We've talked about the engineering design process and followed through looking at some different examples of that. And as we get into our projects, we'll see the EDP come through a little bit more clearly. Want to talk about now. So let's say that we were given a scenario. We were asked to do something like design a car. That's the problem. That's the problem. We've gone through and we've started brainstorming some ideas, and we're narrowing down these ideas and also working on towards generating our actual solution. And so we have to take into consideration design principles. There are several factors that significantly influence the design process. When you think about things like cars, think about what all goes into that goes into cars. If you're not really interested in cars now, I can just give the example of what I looked for the last time that I bought a car. I had some colors in mind. I had particular colors. They weren't the major selling point, but I had different colors in mind that I would like in my car. So that's one. It needed to be a SUV or crossover style, so that's two. It needed to have pretty good gas mileage, so that's three. I wanted it to look good. I didn't want it to look like somebody, something that nobody would want to actually drive. So that's four. So there was a design, an artistic design to it. I wanted it to have a good look to it. It needed to have plenty of cargo space. So that's five. And just so you know, the fact that I wanted like an SUV or crossover and plenty of cargo space do not necessarily go hand in hand. Those were five things that I just that I thought of when I started looking for cars. There were things about it that I don't know if I would call them or not, because they were automatic deal breakers. I wouldn't even consider the car. Power locks, power windows, air conditioning. I wanted it to be an automatic and not a manual transmission. So now I'm up to 9. Other things to take into consideration: does it have satellite radio? Does it have what are the different types of child restraints, dual airbags, things like that. So very quickly, I know I'm in double digits when it comes to the number of factors into a car, and there are so many more, because I'm sure out of the list that I gave, every one of you could come up with something pretty quickly that is different from any of the ones that I have that you might want to take into consideration. So there's lots of factors that influence the idea, the design behind the vehicle. So when we're characterizing design, it's an essential action in engineering and is a primary component of product development. Okay, this is what everybody wants to do. They want to actually build the thing. And so when we're talking about design, that's it. This is the part of engineering that everybody loves. Not everybody likes the background work that goes into it. Good design focuses on efficiency during product development and use by the consumer. So when we're talking about what is a good design, it's easy to make, it's cheap to make, it's not really hard to do, and it doesn't cost a lot of money. But then also customers want it, they buy it, and it's within the price range and other market factors where consumers are going to purchase your product. Design problems seldom arise in clearly defined form. I gave you the initial problem. We're designing a car, but boy, figuring out what all is going to go into that car design, that takes a lot of research, kind of like what we did with the backpacks. I mean, what we did with the backpacks was nothing when it comes to the level of research. If you're talking about major interstate or even international product development. So there's and determining what these factors are. Even once you get to your main factors, this is what we're going to focus on. We're going to design a car. It's going to be a sporty looking SUV. It's going to have good gas mileage. And you start to work on the car, there are going to be other design problems that come up because of what you chose partway into development. You're going to take care of those, and those may create other issues that then spawn other issues. And so that's another element of that's an iterative process. You have to work with these as they come up. Design is often driven by profit motive and the market. If we were to design a car that only got 10 miles to the gallon right now, it probably would not sell. Nobody's going to want to drive a car that they can only drive for 10 minutes before they have to stop at the gas station and fill it up again. So you don't design that car. Instead, you design the car to meet the market. And that is a little bit of an unfortunate, because you could design the most perfect product in the world, but if the world doesn't want it, they're not going to buy it. And so you don't get anywhere by designing that product. So there is a balance there. Good design incorporates the principles of universal design and artistic design. Universal design, does it work? Artistic design, does it look good while it's working? Okay. Universal design states that all engineered products and environments to be usable by all people without the need for modification. Automatically, this is the math person coming out in me. This statement, there's no such thing as a true universal design. There's no single product that'll work 100% all the time for everybody. But most, that's what we want. If I'm going to design a car, I want the average person to be able to drive it. There's going to be exceptions, and there's going to be people who need some kind of accommodations. But if you are within, average to sub-average and above average height, average to sub-average and above average weight, and so on, we want you to be able to drive the car. And so we're going to design our car so that way the most people could drive it if they choose to. All right, so this effort is focused on reducing the need for adaptation or specialization of product post-development. When looking at something like a car, you want the average person to be able to drive. You want the average person to be able to drive the car, and then that's just kind of it. You want to have as few exceptions as possible, so that way, in order to get the entire market, you develop specialized products minimally. 7 factors of universal design. I've actually pretty much hit on these already, but I'm going to talk about them more specifically here. 7 factors of universal design. Equitable use. The design is useful to people with diverse abilities. So in case of a car, whether you're short, average, or tall, you can drive it. Flexibility in use. The design meets a wide range of individual preferences and abilities. People like specific colors in cars, so you want to have a wide range of cars. That's the biggest one I can think of with cars off the top of my head. Leather interior, cloth interior, those kind of things. Okay. Simple and intuitive use. You don't want a car that is a complete overhaul of the system. In America, we're not going to buy cars where the driver's seat is on the right-hand side. We're going to design our cars to have the driver's seat on the left-hand side, because that's what it's easy. It's intuitive. We understand it. We don't have to think about it. We don't have to think about, wait a minute, I got to get on the other side for this car. And because the driver's side is on the left side, things like radio, AC, and those kind of components are in the center. You don't design to have the radio on the roof and then the heat and AC on the floorboard, because that isn't easy. So we keep it simple. It's you may hear me refer to the KISS method, K-I-S-S. Keep it simple, stupid. That's in engineering, we use that all the time. Use the KISS method. Use the KISS method. Keep it simple. Keep it simple. All right. Perceptible information. Design communicates necessary information to the user. In the case of a car, if your oil light comes on or your gas light comes on, they are very unique symbols, and everybody knows what they mean. You don't change your gas light symbol because you want to stand out and you want to be different. You want people to know, hey, when that light comes on, you need fuel. When that light comes on, you need to check your oil. Tolerance and error. The design reduces hazards in use or accidental use. One of the reasons that Legos are so expensive is they have what's called low tolerance, which means the blocks have to be so perfect. That way they don't have any wiggle room. They have an incredibly low tolerance. The higher the tolerance, the cheaper it is to make stuff. But also, as far as users are concerned, if they don't do things 100% perfect, it's going to be okay. And so you want your design to incorporate that. You don't want a user to have a PhD in your product to be able to use it. Low physical effort. The design can be used efficiently and comfortably. I think back to the old Nintendo controllers, which were a rectangle. They had sharp corners, and if you played them for more than 30 minutes, your hand would start to hurt. Versus the controllers now, that's a branch of engineering called ergonomics. The controllers now are all smooth, and you can hold them comfortably in your hand for hours on end. The size and space approach. Size and space for approach and use. The design is appropriate for all users regardless of the body type. So if you are 15 on your learner's permit, or you're 100 years old, can you drive the car that you are designing? You know, that's what we want here. Then we get to talk about the artistic design and engineering. So you've made it practical, now let's make it look good. For all products to be successful, they must be visually appealing. You want your product to look good, and if you don't think that this statement matters, look at stuff like video game controllers, and look at all of the different things that you can buy for them to make them look good. Look at all of the different controller designs. Look at the cars. Look at the cars, and you know, how much people are willing to pay for a car that just looks, not even necessarily that it has performance, but just by how it looks. Now, the basic principles of design used to create art are often applied when developing a product. There are many companies that have artists who work on their product. Balance. The product is visually equal, and visually equal. Now, there's some things here, because in math, when we talk about equal, we tend to think of symmetry. But there are times when design calls for something that's asymmetrical. Symmetrical, look at a car from the front. Asymmetrical, look at a car from the side. But it has to be visually appealing. And you can see cars. You can see cars where, even though they're asymmetrical, when you look at them from the side, you can just tell there's just something off about it. It just looks funny, and it's because of, you know, it's out of balance somehow. And that's a whole conversation for another time right there. Contrast, change in the product's color or value to distinguish the elements of the design. That's why I'll go back again to video game controllers, which, you know, the thumbsticks are often, almost always, a different color from the casing on the rest of the controller, because the elements that you want people to focus on, you use this color contrast to help draw, whether intentionally or unintentionally, you draw the user's attention to it. Center of interest, the area that first attracts the user to the product. Let's go back to cars. It doesn't matter how good. It doesn't matter how good a car performs. If it is just absolutely ugly, not as many people are going to buy it. And that's why these, especially super high performing cars, are designed to look where it just draws you in first, and then performance comes second. You know, because if you don't like the look of the car, it doesn't matter how well it performs. You're not going to buy it. So you want to focus in on these elements. Directional movement, the visual flow as the user manipulates the product. I think of, like, on my on my desk, I have some Rubik's cubes. They're the standard. One is an older one, and it's not as nice. And when you move the pieces around, you see it catch, you feel it catch, and it's not this nice fluid motion. I've got some others that are I have some others, the speed cubes. And with just the flick, everything just moves, and it looks, instead of like a solid object rotating, it looks almost like water. And people pay a lot more for the speed cubes, even if they're not like trying to solve them absolutely as fast as they can, but just because it looks better in how it moves. And so this is kind of what we talk about with directional movements. Harmony, how the product interacts with the surrounding environment. Certain kinds of cars have a particular type of paint on them that make them look reflective, and by reflective I mean truly almost mirror-like. And the whole advertising campaign for these cars, the one I can't remember the name of it, but the one that I thought of, the whole advertising campaign was this car. It was electric. It had this super mirror finish on its paint, and it was to be one with nature. Because as the car was driving through the woods, you could see all the trees reflecting off of it. In a way, it almost gave it a camouflage, like it almost blended in with its background. And and so this car's campaign was to be one with nature, and it was playing off of this harmony idea. And then rhythm, reoccurrence of elements within the product, patterns. A little bit harder to see that within cars, but lots of other products. Repetitions of buttons or patterns, just to give this whole visual appeal. So many of these different things all get factored into the design of the product, and so there's just a lot that you think of when you really get into designing something. So I hope this lesson is one that kind of gets you thinking about when you actually start designing. We're going to be looking at designing the house, in the room, and so think about these things as those conditions are being made. How is the what are the primary constraints? What do you absolutely have to have? That's the direct engineering. And now that you have to have those things, now how do you put it together and make it look good? How do you, in the case of a house, how do you put it all together in a way where somebody is like, I like this and I want to buy it? So some things to think about, and thank you for watching.